Most men who get left behind are not cruel, careless, or lazy. In fact, they are often the opposite. They are attentive, loyal, patient, and emotionally available. That is what makes the breakup so confusing. They look back and genuinely believe they did everything right. They listened. They supported. They stayed. And yet, she slowly pulled away without a clear argument, without a dramatic event, without a villain. This is where the real problem hides. Women rarely leave good men because those men are not good enough. They leave because certain good man habits quietly dissolve respect. And once respect erodes, attraction fades on its own. At the beginning of most relationships, a good man has direction, he has routines, goals, personal standards, and a life that feels solid. He goes to the gym, he pursues his work, he has a rhythm that does not revolve around anyone else. This is not arrogance, it is gravity. And that gravity is deeply attractive because it signals purpose and self-trust. She is drawn into his world, not because he is unavailable, but because he is anchored. Over time, however, many good men begin to rearrange their lives around her comfort. They cancel workouts to talk. They delay missions to give reassurance. They make themselves constantly available, answering every message immediately, reshaping their schedule to match her moods. In their mind, this feels like devotion. It feels noble. It feels like love. But emotionally, it communicates something very different. It tells her that his center has shifted, that his world no longer stands on its own, and that her needs now sit at the top of his priority list. At first, this can feel flattering. Then it starts to feel heavy. When a man slowly hands over his direction, she becomes the emotional carrier of the relationship. She feels like the boss, the compass, the reason his day works or doesn't. Attraction does not grow in that position. It withers, not because she wants power, but because she does not want responsibility for his sense of meaning. The correction is not withdrawal or coldness. It is grounding. A man must protect his routines, his goals, and his standards without apology. He must let her join his life rather than turning her into the reason it exists. When direction stays intact, respect stays alive, and when respect stays alive, attraction has something solid to stand on. But losing direction is only the first crack. Beneath it sits a deeper issue that many men mistake for kindness, and that is what we need to look at next. Many men believe their calmness and kindness are signs of emotional strength. They take pride in being easygoing, understanding, and non-confrontational. On the surface, this looks mature, but the real question is not how gentle a man appears. The real question is where that gentleness comes from. Too often, it is not rooted in strength. It is rooted in fear. Fear of conflict, fear of upsetting her, fear of being seen as difficult, fear of loss. When kindness is driven by fear, a man slowly compromises his spine. He agrees when he disagrees. He laughs off comments that sting. He stays quiet when boundaries are crossed. He tells himself it is not worth the tension. He labels his silence as patience and his compliance as emotional intelligence. But what he is actually doing is swallowing himself to preserve a fragile peace. Women sense this immediately, even if they cannot articulate it. They feel the difference between a man who is calm because he is grounded and a man who is calm because he is afraid of what might happen if he speaks. This creates a subtle but damaging dynamic. The relationship becomes peaceful on the surface, yet hollow underneath. Respect begins to erode because emotional stability without a backbone does not feel like leadership. A man who avoids pain at all costs cannot hold a firm emotional posture. His energy communicates caution instead of confidence, and attraction does not respond to caution, it responds to presence. This is why many women slowly disengage without a clear reason. They are not reacting to a specific argument or mistake. They are responding to an emotional pattern. They feel that the man in front of them is managing the relationship instead of standing within it. Over time, that management feels like fragility, not safety. The solution is not aggression or dominance. It is firmness without guilt. A grounded man disagrees calmly. He says no without over-explaining. He corrects disrespect without raising his voice. He does not rush to smooth discomfort. He allows tension to exist without collapsing. That is what real emotional strength looks like. It is calm, but it is unyielding. When a man learns to stand steady in discomfort, respect naturally returns. And once respect returns, attraction has the conditions it needs to breathe again. But fear-driven kindness is not the only habit that quietly dissolves desire. There's another mistake that often follows right behind it, one that feels like love but functions like self-erasure. One of the most common confusions good men carry is the belief that love means sacrifice without limit. They equate depth of feeling with how much they are willing to endure. So when inconsistencies appear, when small disrespects slip in, when boundaries are tested, they stay quiet. They tell themselves that being understanding is mature, that speaking up might seem insecure, and that real love should be unconditional. In reality, this is not love. It is self-abandonment disguised as devotion. When a man loves someone more than he respects himself, the relationship quietly loses its structure by tolerating behavior that hurts him. He teaches her that his standards are flexible and his self-respect is optional, not because she intends to take advantage, but because human behavior naturally calibrates to what is allowed. Value does not rise where everything is tolerated. It rises where standards are clear and consistent. This is where many women begin to feel uncertain, even if they cannot explain why, on a deeper level. She starts to doubt whether this man can protect the relationship, because he cannot protect himself within it. If he cannot say something when he is hurt, how will he hold the relationship steady when real pressure arrives? Love without boundaries does not feel safe. It feels unstable. Good men often believe that staying quiet prevents conflict. In truth, it only delays it. Unspoken resentments do not disappear. They accumulate, and as they do, warmth slowly turns into irritation. Small things begin to bother her. His presence feels heavier. She may start pulling away, not because she stopped caring, but because something essential no longer feels solid. The correction is not to become demanding or dramatic. It is to reinstate self-respect through clear boundaries. A man must speak when something hurts, not weeks later, but in the moment. He must address disrespect early, calmly, and without emotional charge. And most importantly, he must allow consequences to exist, not as punishment, but as structure. Love that does not require self-erasure creates safety, and safety is what allows attraction to deepen rather than decay. Yet, even when a man begins to sense distance, many still make a critical mistake that accelerates the problem instead of fixing it. That mistake feels generous, patient, and emotionally intelligent, but it quietly teaches the wrong lesson. When a woman begins to pull back, grow colder, or show subtle disrespect, most good men respond in the same way. They try harder, they become warmer, sweeter, more available. They offer more reassurance, more effort, more emotional labor in their mind. This is patience. It feels like emotional maturity. They believe that love should meet distance with understanding, but emotionally. This response trains the exact opposite of what they intend. By rewarding distance with increased effort, a man creates imbalance. Coldness gains power. Disrespect carries no cost. Inconsistency is met with flexibility instead of correction. Over time, she learns, unconsciously, that she does not need to regulate her behavior, because he will regulate himself for both of them. This slowly turns the dynamic from partnership into management. And no woman wants to feel like she is managing a man. Attraction does not grow where effort flows in only one direction. When a man overinvests in response to withdrawal, he communicates that access to him is cheap and guaranteed, regardless of how she shows up. This does not create closeness. It creates emotional laziness, and eventually, it creates boredom or irritation, even if care still exists. Many women in this situation describe a strange feeling. They say he became too much, too available, too accommodating. Not because his love was wrong, but because it lacked consequence. Love without structure loses polarity. Without polarity, attraction fades quietly. Without a fight, the solution is not punishment or emotional withdrawal as a tactic. It is mirroring reality. A grounded man responds to effort with effort and to distance with space. He does not chase what is pulling away. He does not over-explain or beg for closeness. He allows her behavior to meet itself. This restores balance. Either attraction recalibrates or the truth of the connection becomes clear. Love that flows without consequence becomes cheap access. Love that respects boundaries maintains value. And value is what keeps attraction alive over time. But even when men understand this, many still avoid addressing the deeper issue because it requires stepping into discomfort, and that avoidance is another silent killer of respect. One of the most damaging habits good men develop is avoiding truth in order to avoid discomfort. They convince themselves that tension is dangerous, that arguments mean failure, and that bringing up issues will make them seem controlling or insecure. So they swallow their feelings, they ignore small disrespects, they overlook inconsistencies and odd behaviors. They call it patience, they call it maturity. But emotionally, it is self-betrayal. Every time a man chooses silence over truth, he teaches the relationship that his inner experience is negotiable. He signals that quiet suffering is preferable to risk. Women feel this not as kindness, but as fear dressed in calm language. And fear does not inspire attraction, it erodes it. What actually destroys relationships is not conflict. It is unspoken resentment. These resentments accumulate quietly, like rust beneath the surface. Over time, they distort perception. He becomes subtly irritated. She becomes subtly annoyed. Small things feel heavier than they should. Neither person knows exactly why. Respect begins to rot without a single dramatic moment to point to. Many breakups happen here. She leaves saying she just does not feel the same anymore. He is blindsided because from his perspective, nothing bad ever happened, but internally. The emotional foundation has been eroding for months. The correction is simple, but not easy. A man must address issues calmly and directly when they first appear, not with emotional charge, not with long explanations, just truth. One clear statement, one grounded posture. Then he stays present in the discomfort without folding, fixing, or apologizing for having standards. This is what emotional resilience looks like. Attraction requires the ability to sit in tension without collapsing. When a man can do that, respect stabilizes, and when respect stabilizes, desire has something solid to attach to. But even men who speak up often sabotage themselves in another way, by confusing being easy to keep with being valuable to keep. Many good men pride themselves on being low maintenance. They believe that the less they require, the safer the relationship becomes. They become endlessly flexible, agreeable, and accommodating. They accept anything to avoid rejection. They do not ask for consistency. They do not require effort. They do not insist on respect. They call this being chill. In reality, it is fear of loss disguised as ease. When a man reduces his needs to keep someone, he removes the very conditions that create investment. Emotional investment does not grow in comfort. It grows in responsibility. When nothing is required, nothing is earned. And when nothing is earned, there is no fear of losing it. This is why tone slowly shifts. Boundaries get tested. Effort becomes inconsistent, not out of malice, but because the relationship no longer demands presence. A man who is always available, always flexible, and always understanding communicates that his time has no weight. His presence becomes a guarantee instead of a privilege, and what is guaranteed slowly loses value. Attraction does not survive in a dynamic where access is unconditional. The solution is not to announce standards or issue ultimatums, it is to live within them quietly. A grounded man makes his time non-flexible. His presence is not automatic. Closeness has a price, and that price is effort, respect, and consistency. He does not chase connection where these are absent. He allows space to exist without anxiety. When a woman must show up to experience closeness, her investment increases naturally, not because she is manipulated, but because relationships function on reciprocity. Value is maintained when presence must be earned, not begged for. Yet, even with standards in place, many men unconsciously undo everything by placing her above themselves without realizing it. This final pattern looks subtle, even romantic, but it quietly destroys polarity. One of the quietest ways good men lose attraction is by placing a woman on a pedestal without realizing it. It shows up in small behaviors that feel loving on the surface. He prioritizes her feelings over his boundaries. He feels grateful for basic affection. He treats her attention as something rare or special that he must protect at all costs. Over time, this creates a subtle imbalance. She becomes the prize, and he becomes the one seeking approval. When a man operates from this posture, polarity begins to collapse. Instead of holding standards, he waits to be chosen. Instead of offering presence, he seeks validation. This does not make a woman feel cherished. It makes her feel pressure. Either she must live up to an idealized position, or she must step away from it. Attraction cannot survive when a man shrinks himself to elevate someone else. Many women in this dynamic still appreciate the man. They may even love him in a certain way. But appreciation is not attraction. Attraction requires polarity, and polarity requires a man who is rooted in himself. A woman cannot stay drawn to a man who positions himself as inferior, no matter how kind he is. Oh, the correction is quiet and powerful. A grounded man offers presence without seeking validation. He does not audition for love. He allows alignment to decide the relationship. He combines compassion with boundaries, warmth with standards, and calmness with backbone. He does not need to be harsh or distant. He simply stays rooted. This is the core message of the entire video. Being good is not the problem. Goodness that costs a man his spine is. When a man gives from fullness instead of fear, love feels safe instead of heavy. Respect remains intact. Attraction does not need to be chased or forced. It emerges naturally. Once these patterns are seen clearly, they cannot be unseen, and when men stop repeating them, they stop reliving the same endings with different faces. This message matters, because countless men blame themselves for losing women they treated well, without understanding what actually went wrong. If this perspective resonated, it is likely someone else you know needs to hear it too. Spread the awareness. This is how good men stay grounded, respected, and genuinely desired.